This next panel is the Cloud Sustainability Panel, and I'm super excited to hear what they have to say. I would like to now invite Natalie from HSBC, Mike from Nubank, Bindu from Teradata, and Mike from the FinOps Foundation to the stage. Please give them a warm round of applause.
Hey everyone. Let me figure out if I can do the buttons. Look at that, I can figure it out. So I guess, yeah, to kick us off, you would have saw me at the keynote. If you didn't, then you missed out. I'm going to get everyone here on the stage to introduce themselves because they've got really interesting stories to tell. And so I'll pass over to Natalie to kick us off.
Hi everyone. So I'm Natalie Daley. I am a director at HSBC and I'm the head of Cloud Economics and FinOps. As part of the FinOps capability, we also have a sustainability angle. So that's why I've been invited today to help share with you.
My name is Mike Rosenberg. I lead the cloud financial management function at Nubank. We're the largest all-digital bank in the world based in Brazil, home of the Amazon forest. So sustainability is very much important to us.
Thank you. Hi, I am Bindu Sharma. I lead the cloud financial operations at Teradata, and in Foundation, I started off leading the working group for sustainability, and then with the amazing work of publishing the sustainability capability, the sustainability persona, now we have transformed into a special interest group.
Cool. All right. So I guess the agenda really is just to start to set some common ground on what cloud sustainability is, talk about the challenges that people face as they start to look into this area, talk about some progress that we have seen, and hopefully we can have the panelists share some of their progress so far, and then hopefully get you in a position where you're maybe ready to commit to start adding FinOps, sustainability into your FinOps, or adding carbon-aware FinOps if you take up JR's thing from the keynote. So I guess to kick us off is who is including cloud sustainability in their FinOps practice today? Yeah, that's about 11%, probably close to our state of FinOps data. And I guess who is aiming to do more cloud sustainability in their capabilities? Okay, cool, that's perfect. I assume that everyone here is somewhat going to be interested in that, but it was good to ask. But I guess, let's be honest, there is no runners. It's okay to be yet to start. I mean, it's how a lot of the organizations are at this stage. And it's also okay, also to be unsure if you're doing it right today. We will make some mistakes as we go, but I think that's how we explore and find a plan to work this into our practices. It's pretty much how FinOps came to be within many organizations. They tried to challenge this cost thing and started to explore and started to make some mistakes and figured out what works and what doesn't work. So I think that's basically the attitude we should be taking towards this at the moment. And so I guess over to Bindu is what are some of the early benefits you are seeing and what are the benefits you're expecting to gain over the near term with cloud sustainability?
Yeah, sure. The benefits is it's all dependent on the organization that we are seeing. Let's take an example of bigger organization. So it is identified by the drivers that bigger organization is looking towards. It could be a customer requirement, it could be the personal individual going in, or it could be when they have an established ESG team. That's when they kick off this benefit, and then they want to find out more details about the cloud part of the sustainability, and then that's when they collaborate with the practitioner. And the near term that we think of, again, these are all the brainstorming from our 6 sessions and some use cases from the industry, is that getting into the roadmap for the company and also defining, getting to the level of unit economics for the carbon. So that's what we are looking forward to.
So I guess sustainability is a little bit hard and complex because it has its own language, and practitioners are sort of faced with a whole new range of terms that they may not be familiar with: embodied carbon, scopes 1, 2, and 3, CO2 versus CO2e. And I think that sometimes that can feel like a bit of an unknown area and a bit challenged to start exploring that when they're already focused very heavily on just trying to get their cost under control. But I think the big thing here is we're really looking for practitioners to start making partnerships with their team. Figure out where is your ESG team, who is interested in your organisation around sustainability, and rely on them to help, bring you up to knowledge. And I guess that leads to, we know that we want more team collaboration, and State of FinOps shows that, that not only is growing sort of, in the future, but it's also wanting to do more in that collaboration, not just passing data, but understanding goals and aligning. So I guess maybe speak over to Mike, like how much knowledge does the FinOps practitioner need to have around sustainability?
I look at it as sustainability is a form of cost efficiency. You're using fewer resources, you're in turn, lowering not only your spend, but your carbon footprint. So as we roll it out, it's just a function of using resources efficiently and effectively, more so than you're saving carbon. Carbon's an added benefit to that because, kind of like what Mike just alluded to, first you want to be well optimized. Then you roll out, the concepts of just using less is better. You treat it almost like recycling or just being a minimalist. And when you do that, you really don't need to know between the various, first order, second order, third order effects of the whole carbon chain. And, at Nubank, we're very much crawling from the IT perspective. At a corporate level, we buy our offsets and we're carbon neutral. I look at that as financial engineering, and I'll say something a little provocative. It's like the old style way of buying indulgences. I can forgive my sins by writing a check. Well, I want people to take action. And when you use less, you're getting a better outcome. You're getting a more involved engineer making a better decision that not just incorporates serving your customers. We're all here in our companies to make money, using fewer resources, and in turn, if we can do all those things and lower our carbon footprint, that's a win. So the technical terms, the very detailed things, I think, it's very important for people to know that there's driving benefit. Do you know the details? It's like if I drop this mic, it's going to hit the ground. I'm not a physicist. There is a mathematical way to explain how this mic's going to hit the ground. I don't think the engineers need to get that detailed. Less is more, and I try to keep it simple.
And then maybe Natalie, how do you align on the goals and responsibilities in order to encourage that action on sustainability?
Thanks, Mike. So I think one of the first things that we embarked on at HSBC was to align, as Bindu said, with our ESG group. So as an organisation, we have carbon reduction goals. And from a FinOps capability point of view, it was really important for any policies and tactics that I wanted to deploy with the organisation that it was anchored into the overall company's strategy and goals. So by doing that, we had to partner from a FinOps capability with our ESG groups, but also with the CIOs for the businesses, who are also quite keen at looking at how they could reduce the carbon footprint as well as deploy for business value. And then we started with making that data visible, and then allowing that to be a decision point at the same point of when you considered things like application deployment and other factors that become part of that decision process about where you deploy your applications.
Bindu, did you have anything else?
I think what I want to add, Mike covered, as a FinOps practitioner, we know it's an operating model and the culture shift that we bring inside the company. Mike very well covered the operating model of it, like thinking about optimization. Natalie covered the sponsorship part of it. The other part that comes in is the visibility, like collecting the data as soon as possible. We know there are some limitations from cloud service provider that we cannot give the granularity, the immediate data, but collect what you have. So this is points from the practitioner point of view. And then give the visibility, and it kind of drives the accountability, and that brings to what Mike completely described, the optimized model of FinOps practitioner. And you always have a sponsorship from executive, so drive towards that, and that would help.
And so I think, what we hear from practitioners is there's actually a bit of a disagreement on the way to measure is inconsistent in the way it's calculated, the way it's delivered to you from different providers, different software suites out there. And I think that all of this sort of makes people feel like they have to stall and wait for it to get perfect. And so I think we really just want to, it's better to start making decisions and try something than it is to do nothing while we wait for an obvious sign. So maybe Mike, again, can you give some details about activities you have implemented to move your organization towards cloud sustainability?
Just to self-report, we're very much an AWS shop. So last year, our data analytics team moved from AMD processors over to Graviton. We went from roughly 10% Graviton usage to 57% Graviton usage. Our cost went down 14%. And I'll make a side note to that. Amazon always tells you it's 20% faster, more performant. We came from AMD, so it was already 10% lower. So we did get, from a cost perspective, so we did get a better than 20% cost improvement from that. But then Amazon wanted to do a case study on us, and our carbon footprint from that transition from AMD over to Graviton was reduced by 21%. So we're trying to walk the talk, and not only was it a celebration of saving money, getting more performance, but we're also, having a lower carbon footprint. And if I could, tell the engineers what to do, because I don't think you can ever tell engineers what to do, use Graviton first, use those Nitro processors. Amazon has made a commitment to using lower energy. It's good for them, it's good for us, it's good for everybody. So for us, we try to go Graviton first wherever we can on a service. And if you don't use it, then we need to understand why. What other benefit are you getting to offset the lack of reduction in carbon footprint?
And Natalie?
So coupled with that, we offer what we call a cost estimation service. And what we've done recently is enhance that service to give a carbon estimation. So when organizations are within the bank are looking to migrate to cloud, they have a cost estimation of what the potential workload may cost moving forward, but also a carbon reduction estimation as well. And having that data at that point when they're making the decisioning also helps which CSP to go for and which location to potentially look as an opportunity. Now, all the businesses will make their decisions based on the iron triangle, which we've heard, I think, numerous times throughout the past couple of days. There will always be a way up between cost, resilience, and speed, but to add carbon to that decision as well allows the business to be more purposeful and more deliberate in the way that they move forward with their applications. And where we're moving to is that we'd actually like to associate carbon reduction with FinOps activity, so be able to play back to the businesses when they have taken an optimization tactic, what impact that's also had on carbon. Early stages with that at the moment, but that's where we'd like to get to.
And I think this gets back to that point about accuracy. I think we can all have debates about whether or not is it specifically 20% or not, but it's teaching the organization about this data that's coming in and the reaction towards it. And ideally, we're sort of working out, at least directionally, we're heading down in carbon, and then we can then figure out how we can improve that data, those measurements, and get more accurate. But we're already in the practice. We've already established that sort of way of working internally. As that data gets better and as data becomes more accurate, we're just feeding the more accurate data to the engineers to do the things we've already started to learn and the way they start to behave and react to that data that's coming in. So I guess I'll go back to you, Mike. How have you adjusted decision-making, for example, in making commitments in commitment-based discounts, like buying RRIs, buying savings plans, because we know that they lock you in?
Well, we're kind of in a very good position at Nubank in that we're still very much on a growth curve. We just recently, last month, came through acquiring our 100 millionth customer. And we're still growing and growing and growing. So for us, commitments are very much, at our stage in the process, still very much a financial instrument more so than trying to scale. Because even if we scale down, our growth curve is at such a slope that it wouldn't matter. So for us, the commitment side of it is very much more on the financial engineering side of the house. Where we have a really good opportunity is, if you're a Nubank customer, your bank is on your phone. Using less battery from the customer, fewer recharges, less data plans. So consolidating and making that an efficient process is where we're going to see very big gains that we can actually distribute out. Could you measure that? I think it would be incredibly difficult to do so, but we know it's the right thing to do, and those are the directions we want to move toward.
And Natalie, do you want to?
Yeah, I think you articulated that perfectly. So I think for us, the granularity of the data, so we are working with the CSPs to improve on that point, will help the decisioning in terms of those trade-offs. So again, we're very much in a growth pattern. The commitments are a key financial instrument for managing that growth, but being able to articulate the trade-off between the two, you need the granularity of the data to do that, will help make that decisioning moving forward. So that's something we're actively looking at.
Yeah, and so I think, I look at it as the phases of FinOps, right? You go through that inform, optimize, and operate. We really are probably in that first step in that phase. We're really just starting to inform our practitioners and engineers across the organization. Start to figure out, where roughly are we on this map, and how can we improve that over time? But I guess maybe over to Mike again. What things do you think demonstrate your progress so far in cloud sustainability?
For us, it's measuring usage versus cost. Because again, cost is a construct, large, no matter who your provider is, large customers have contracts, you have customized terms and conditions and what have you. But for us, if we can get it done in fewer cycles, we can use less data transfer, we can use less storage, and by just being the least profitable customer for our CSP it's a simple way to approach it. Because if you really get down into it, we run very heavily out of the Sao Paulo data center. Energy in Brazil is a different game than it is in the United States, which is a different game. I think I read last week Germany was net positive in providing green energy to the country. So if you want to be super green, you're going to be in the Frankfurt data center, but we can't afford that latency. And so there's a lot of other factors to that. So again, it's less is more, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but that's just the best way to describe it, is you consume fewer resources and then wherever you can, put pressure on your CSPs to do the right thing as it relates to the actual physical infrastructure.
Natalie, what are your predictions for how different this will be by next year's FinOps X?
I think we'll definitely continue to see growth in this space. As the data improves, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be able to be more specific about the guidance we can offer as FinOps practitioners. As I said earlier, looking at carbon reduction in relation to our FinOps tactics, I think is a huge value-adding activity. So I think there will continue to be growth in this area, and data will be key to how we are able to articulate the benefits of. We're working on creating dashboards that literally aligns your cost and your carbon data at that same point for your business users, and that will enable their conscious decisioning that I mentioned earlier. So I think we're going to see absolute growth in this space, especially as organizations, also from a top-down perspective, are also becoming more carbon conscious.
Mike, did you want to?
I think the best opportunity between now and next year is education. Incorporating that into specifications. If it's not in an engineer specification, they're not going to do it. If they're not measured by the outcomes, they're not going to think about that at the input side of the process as they do their architecture development and then operate those services that serve our respective customers. So for us, it's going to be very education heavy. You can make a difference. I have a phrase I use with regard to cost. No one raindrop thinks it's responsible for the flood. But if you can convince enough raindrops to do the right thing, you're going to get a different outcome, and that's the way I wish to approach it.
Yep. Bindu?
I would say, I think Mike and Natalie have covered it. I would say your existing run books, right, for the FinOps that you have for cost remediation and, again, around dashboarding, just try to, after the education part, try to improve it and include the carbon perspective. Add more, so you have gain the education and then try to have enablement program across organization, that how it delivers the value, how it aligns with the business goal and such. So I would, at this time, I think one thing that you can take is extend your current FinOps practitioner playbook from cost optimization to include the carbon awareness and carbon calculation.
Yeah, and it feels like really what the message here is that, I think if we continue to spend time on making it feel unachievable, unrealistic, people are just not going to get going in this game. And I think what the FinOps practitioners need is a bit of hopeful optimism. And when I look at the challenges that they've faced around data, it's like we need to describe what that extra granularity will be providing, what calculating it better would actually provide the practitioner. So that way that it's more about the outcome that we need to achieve versus the individual thing that we're complaining or missing or hopeful of. And so, we really want practitioners to just start getting familiar, start making a partnership with your sustainability or your ESG teams internally. Find out who is thinking about ESG in your org, and I guess, to steal Mike's thing, start making raindrops in your organization, because unless there's a lot of people interested in this field inside your org, I feel like practitioners sort of hold back. I think when there's a cost involved, everyone gets going. Like, if we say that we need to get this cost under control, I think it's pretty easy for them to go, well, I understand $1. I think when it comes to carbon, there's a lot of stepping back, reserved, waiting for someone to lead the way. And I guess that's effectively why the FinOps Foundation Technical Advisory Council added cloud sustainability into the framework this year, was to sort of signal the fact that you do need to start thinking about this. It is something that is a pathway we need to start putting the torch down and then moving forward. So I guess open for all the panelists here, and maybe we'll start with Bindu at the other end. It's like, how did you start building that culture within your company of carbon awareness? And I guess, start to create your raindrops, if you will.
I think I'll lay out in a plan, like, first of all, and then combining it from FinOps practitioner point of view, like, we think of sponsorship, as I talked about, so identify the driver, and then align with them. Small organization, maybe you are that pioneer. Big organization, you collaborate. Then visibility, where start collecting the data and start dashboarding it. Whatever current data is, do not try to analyze that data at that point. And then the last one, I would say, in that planning stage, is define that baseline from your collection and then define some KPIs. And in the meantime, make those actionable. So you're also reaching out to the product team to take actions, and that's what I talked about, like improvise your current practitioner run books. And then in the future, I see it like getting to the unit economics part of it. So the collaboration of a FinOps practitioner goes beyond internal, it goes external, like talking to CSP to get the granularity, the accuracy, and the timely data availability. Yeah. And then one other part of it, and we did cover, is the enablement program. Like, distinguishing between 1, 2, and 3, where scope 1, 2, and 3, where it's coming from, who is responsible, and then how do you make your plan to talk to the cloud service provider or your vendors. And the other area we can touch is the procurement in the enablement program. Like, when you're procuring other SaaS software, give them the right questions to ask. So whatever is coming in is also, there is a carbon conscious culture always involved.
No, for me, I equate very much carbon savings to, being efficient from an operational perspective. So what I want to do is, like, when we have a cost savings win, I do a blog post. We describe the technical problem, the team that solved it, what it means at a unit level, and then what it means at Nubank scale. I want to add to that not just the cost savings, but the carbon reduction. And I'm very much a believer in, if you've never read Richard Thaler's book, Nudge, you can't tell engineers what to do, but you can kind of give them a gentle push in the right direction. And maybe cost doesn't motivate somebody, but reducing carbon footprint might. And they may get the same personal, professional satisfaction out of achieving a carbon reduction where it's only a couple of bucks, it's no big deal. And so what I'll be doing when I write my blog post starting next year is adding that carbon element to it in addition to cost, and slowly nudge people to engage on this conversation.
I think, so 100% agree with all of those gems of wisdom. I would also add success stories I found are very powerful. So as Mike was saying and the team was saying, we started small. We started with engineers who were already carbon conscious and wanted to make a difference, showcased the activities and the benefits that were generated for their businesses. And then equally, I found that there were certain business lines within the bank who were further ahead. So we identified our allies, if you like, and we partnered to make those things more visible to the wider organization to say, hey, look, well, not only are we reducing cost, but we're also reducing carbon. Simple things like power scheduling and switching things off when you're not using it will give you an immediate carbon reduction. And if you can somehow make that visible and partner with some of the your allies around your organization, I think that's also really powerful and helps drive change and change in culture amongst your colleagues and peers.
Yeah, I think it's just driving up that interest in this topic area within your organisation, so that we're positioned to have a good progression forward. I think that if we don't really want to start standing still as we get better data or as we get clearer pictures on the right way to do the right calculations or what is the total carbon one way or another. I think it's just trying to exercise a muscle so that we already have that muscle memory as that progress goes forward in our organisations. So we have some assets on the FinOps.org website. We have the FinOps framework capability. We have the cloud sustainability and it's intersecting with FinOps paper. And then we do have a cloud environmental sustainability 101 assessment and education guide. So you'll find those on FinOps.org. And then, there is data from the cloud providers. You saw some updates to those this morning at the keynote. They are an input into your practice today. It's at least a data source to begin this, and I think they're also out on the vendor floor. There's some interesting products out there that are doing their own carbon estimates that figure out exactly. But I think having some data in the path of the engineer and start to sort of directionally reduce that usage, that footprint in front of your engineers is going to be at least starting this journey, starting to build that muscle memory for our organisations. And then, we'd love to lean on our cloud providers harder and harder about what would help us move this space forward. We've got the vendor market, and then lastly, for the practitioners in the crowd, we're really excited to get you involved in our special interest group. We want to hear, exactly what is your individual challenges as you're looking into the space, and then guide, the rest of the community as you're sort of experimenting and finding success. And then in the Slack space, we have the chat sustainability. If you just want to have a conversation or ask a question, I think we don't have a QA slide, but I guess we can open to the room for QA.
Well, let's give a big round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a catch box. I will throw it and you will catch it, and it's soft. And just talking to the top.
Hey, thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciated it. I am kind of starting out on this journey. As of now, we just provide yearly reports of our carbon footprint, and we are slowly starting to get more involved in this process, so this has really been helpful. My question is, Mike, you mentioned in your blog post that as you do optimizations, you plan on tracking the carbon footprint related to that particular optimization. So my question goes to how you do that, because I was having a conversation with my vendor yesterday. One of the things they mentioned was like, your cloud service providers do provide those, but those are at a much higher level. So when you pull it from your vendor reports, they are probably more accurate. And my follow-up question to them was like, okay, so if I do a right sizing, will your vendor report catch it and tell me, because of this right sizing, this is a carbon footprint that you've changed? And they said no. So my question to you is, how do you do that?
Well, one, I would kind of push back and say, are their tools accurate? And just to be cynical, Amazon has a 3-month lag, and a 3-month lag in us trying to move at the speed of light isn't going to work. I'm going to experiment with the cloudcarbonfootprint.org tooling. It's open source. There's also some great resources at the Green Software Foundation to use. And I'm going to start with a third party because I want to take my billing data that I get here and now, not wait for 3 months to get the report from the AWS console, and run it through that and experiment with it. Is it going to work? I hope so. Do I know at this point? I don't know. But I'm going to experiment because doing nothing's not an option.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great question. Even though we're able to report on some aspects of carbon reduction, we started simple. We started with power scheduling. It's off. So it was a reverse calculation. But that's how we began. That's where we started. Mike put up a slide with the service providers. They do have dashboards, and I have seen in the past year some real improvements in that data. And what we've done is we've built some bespoke tooling above that to kind of normalize that data to help us start moving towards it. But it is absolutely a journey. It will be different for every organization. I think just back to Mike's point, just start simple, start small, and start, presenting those wins. And before you get to, the carbon reduction for optimization, just surface the data. Yeah. As part of that decision-making process, if they can see the carbon emissions through certain locations, and if certain latency isn't an issue, then they will actively choose. I find most engineers want to do the right thing. They will actively choose the location that has lower carbon if it doesn't compromise some of the other business levers. So just by presenting that data and doing that via your FinOps channels that you currently already have, you can actually start influencing those types of actions.
I would like to add that, what we have seen in our organization is you come up with the data, you show the data, add the carbon column to it, but you do need to collaborate with engineering. Let's say if you take open source tool, you need their help to deploy it. Unless you have an engineering in your FinOps organization. So again, and that will elevate more interest where they see that, the carbon is high and we can make an impact. So you do need to collaborate with the engineering.
Coming back to this morning's keynote, the ecosystem has, some areas, some really good support in this. I think you should be talking to the vendors on the floor about how they can help you with this, this very specific challenge. You could go down the route of using the open source tools, and that is definitely one way to go. But I do think that there's some really interesting things coming out in the vendor market space. And I think the big thing there would be to demonstrate what they're doing that the clouds aren't, so that they can be very clear that the thing you're missing and the value you're getting from that more granular data.
So outside of location and powering off, what are some more advanced levers you can pull to lower your carbon output?
They're all looking at me. Again, like I said, putting the pressure on because at the end of the day, whether we use it or not, it's still in a data center owned by a hyperscaler somewhere. And getting them to also invest in technology, us as customers asking them, like with Amazon and their Nitro process and the Gravitons and what have you, using better technology, because even if you use less of a inefficient technology, it's still an inefficient technology at the bottom of the stack. And asking them to invest is important. But for us, it's just using less, because again, I equate less usage to carbon footprint, and it's a synonym for cost for me. Or not so cost, again, because cost is more of a financial construct, obviously. It's usage. Can I get my usage per unit? So you can do a unit economic with cost as a denominator, or you could put in compute seconds or gigabytes of data transfer. So make usage metrics, because if people see that they're using less and you can track it, because that's data we all get, daily or several times a day, you can synthesize a directionally correct process. We may not know how to actually take those data transfer gigabytes and turn it into carbon, but I know less is better. And for me, that's a great place to get started, because I tend to overthink things and just less.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, actually. If you want to look at specific tactics, anything that re-architects your applications to be more efficient, to run queries in less time, it all links to the same thing, which is using less. What we're not able to do at that level of sophistication is work out the carbon reduction, but by using less, you're making an impact.
Other thing I can think of is we have seen yesterday's keynote about shifting left. So building it into your automation, working with the product team, so that when they're selecting the technology, like what Mike and Natalie talked about, the modernization of your current architecture, or maybe in your roadmap, it is already built into the product.
So there's a lot of talk about carbon reduction. Would it not be a better focus to, because human nature is that, given that there's an increased digitization of services, increased investment in AI, we're not actually in reality seeing a carbon reduction at all. Have you tried also applying other metrics as well alongside it? So I'm not saying not having a carbon reduction target, but any other metrics that you would use that would also drive maybe increased efficiencies? Because as was talked about, it's about the efficient use of resources. So have you used any metrics that align with that encourage people to be as optimized as they can be by design?
Yeah, I think one of the key, if I understood your question correctly, one of the key maturity advancements that we made in the FinOps capability is to have increasing numbers of KPIs and metrics to help articulate on a level playing field how optimized an application or a team or even a business unit, we can roll it up to those levels. And one of the key metrics that we use is unit cost reduction, unit consumption, size of machines, eliminated wastage. There's numerous things that can help tell a story. And I think what the FinOps capability can help the organization understand is how optimized an environment is based on those business requirements, because it won't always be relevant in that moment in time, depending on what's happening with the environment or what the business drivers are. But what you can do from a FinOps point of view is objectively project those KPIs and metrics and then make it comparable. And all of that encourages more efficiency, less waste, etc. Also, to what Bindu was saying earlier, shift left. If you can then get to a point where you are implementing patterns, you are implementing enforcement policies. That's something that we have live now on our platforms around, unattached disks, all of those kind of things that kind of linger around and create unnecessary cost. All of those metrics and KPIs help to reduce and be more optimized.
Yeah, I've seen practitioners use elasticity metrics, where they're basically showing the variation between their peak load work usage at peak loads and then work what that looks like on the weekends effectively. So how much is this thing actually scaling up and down, which would at least show that this thing is more of a cloud-like service and able to use the minimums. But I think it's more going into those observability tools, and I have practitioners looking at their average CPU utilization. So not just looking at how much the cloud resource number is, but actually on those resources themselves, start to think about, can we start to squish the number of things we actually need because we're not actually using the resource itself. But definitely immature in this space, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for further voices to grow that out.
Okay, you folks are in front of the monitors, so make it quick.
No worries, thanks. I just have two quick comments. I've been doing the cloud sustainability for a couple of years now, and one of the things that I've learned is that the data that's reported are merely estimates, right? So there's no absolute in those numbers that they deliver through the footprint tools. Secondly, one of the things that really kind of turned everybody to really pay attention is we had extended our forecast from dollars or units to carbon units. We created a carbon unit value, matched it to the usage unit value. So whatever we forecasted, we could actually forecast our carbon footprint in the future. So we can say next year, based on this forecast, we're going to have an extra 100 metric tons. So that's unacceptable. So how do we then take that number and put it backwards? And how do we then go back to the forecast people and say, okay, you need to find reductions. You need to find ways that we can be more efficient with what we're using. So just two quick comments for people that are getting on this journey, that it's not an absolute number, it's an estimate, and whatever you deliver is going to be an estimate on their estimate. So do the best you can estimating. Thank you.
Just one quick question. So for those of us who are starting new, they say to each their own. So have you seen at an exec level, like top 3 metrics that that really garner to help get that exec support? Because I know at the engineering level, showing it by efficiency and usage, that works. But are there certain metrics that you say, for starting off, if you take these top 2, that's a good way to get your journey going?
I can talk about top 1. I'll leave it to Natalie. And I would say, I think for them, and now this requires working with multiple teams. So in our organization, we do get customer requests who, before signing the contract or a deal, even in the RFP, they ask for what is our sustainability. Now, this is a broader ESG. What is our ESG roadmap? How are we tracking and such? And so then it drills down to the product cloud sustainability. So giving them those numbers and tracking that for the ESG team, it helps the exec teams to make those better decisions and make those better announcements. So that's what we have seen as one metric to measure.
I think all I would add to that is you started your question with, every organization is different. So I think for me, it was the aggregation of that data. So there's some challenges around the granularity, but being able to aggregate it up and report back at whatever metric matters to your organization. And the most simplest one is obviously carbon reduction. Being able to aggregate that up and make comparisons to the previous month, the previous year to show progress, I think is a very good starting point when you first begin.
And for us, because of our scale, we have to think about it in terms at a unit level. Because at an aggregate level, we're still growing like crazy. So our aggregate carbon consumption is going up as our customer base grows. But if we look at it at that individual unit level and we break it down to that, that's where we want to focus on. For the engineers, that's the metric they can influence. And if you can't influence it, it never becomes important to you. So we need to describe it in the right perspective in order to get people to understand that they can take action and make a difference.
Different levels for different people, just like FinOps, right? Yeah.
I know there are more questions. And that's wonderful, and you can continue the conversations here or outside, but I would like to thank the panelists for being up there. Give them one more big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have the privilege to point out that it's lunchtime, so go out to the Marina Terrace, 11:30, enjoy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.